Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are joining us. Welcome to this month episode of Construction Carbon Talk. And this Construction Carbon Talk basically is out here to assist in facilitating decarbonization of new construction. And for this episode, we are going to be discussing how does BIM facilitate decarbonization of construction projects. And to discuss this important topic with us, I have Rachel Sodlo and Timothy Olaomi, PhD. And Rachel, can you kindly tell us about yourself?
Yes, of course. My name is Rachel Sudlow, and I'm R&D lead at Scape, who are a national procurement body. I have a focus on environment and digital strategies there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. Also, Dr. Timothy Olaomi, kindly tell us about yourself.
Oh, thank you, Shoaib. I'm Dr. Timothy Olaomi, and a staff professor at Napier University. My research is basically related to BIM, sustainability, anything related to applying technology in construction processes, especially including the built environment. So these are basically my focus area for research.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel and Dr. Olaomi. Let me inform you, our participants, that Construction Carbon Talk is in partner with your hub, and also it's brought to you by Carbonetrics, which is a carbon management tool for built environment sector. Now, Dr. Timothy, I'm going to be starting with you. And can you kindly assist us to understand what BIM is all about? That's building information modeling. What is it all about?
Built information modeling, that's BIM, is basically a process, a mixture of process and technology, including people, which enable us to develop our buildings right from the source, even to when we decommission the building. So it enables us to undo every information about the building, the materials, the people, the resources within a single hub. So it's basically, although some people have a misconception as regards BIM as maybe a software, I use Revit, so I am BIM compliant. Of course, that's just the technological aspect of it. Okay. So we have 5 aspects of it, which is the people, the policy, the processes, of course, the technological aspect of it as well. So all of this must be in place before we can talk about using BIM in a project.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Rachel, I know that currently you work with Scape, which is a public sector body, and you procure for public sector clients. However, kindly let me take you back to your, if you may, your past life, where you were working for a tier 1 contractor. And I understand that, you worked on a project tagged Auto BIM. Do you mind, telling us about what this project is all about, and, if the tool can actually assist contractor, in dealing with the carbon emission during construction project?
No, not at all. That's fine. So Auto BIM was a big research project that was about 3 years long, and it probably finished about just over a year ago now. And the software we produced is in testing, live testing. It's quite exciting. It was a project that was sponsored by Innovate UK, and it had academic partners, industry partners, and tier 1 contractor partners. And we had a big research phase where we looked at the adoption of BIM and what we needed to do, because it hadn't been adopted in the last 10 years properly, and how we could make a difference. So Auto BIM was all about finding easy routes into BIM, and we designed 4 platforms within it, one of which was a embodied carbon tool.
Interesting. So when we're talking about the embodied carbon side of things, so does this software or this tool, does it assist us to assist contractors to capture the carbon before they begin construction process, or they can actually input the data while they are carrying out the construction process?
So at any point, really, because we designed it as a plugin to Revit.
Okay.
So Revit, for anybody that doesn't know, is the most commonly used software for producing design drawings, generally in construction, not so much for civil engineering, but for construction.
Okay.
So we designed it as a plug-in to there. So every time that a drawing is electronically produced, then the tool works so that it can automatically scan that drawing and measure the carbon impact of those components. And it's quite good that it's automated, because if the design changes, you've got you can instantly recalculate. Whereas that's the problem with manual tools, is that that takes a lot of recalculation if you haven't got it built into the model.
Oh, interesting. We hope that, the owner of this auto BIM, that is the tier 1 contractor that owns this auto BIM, they can roll it out for other contractors to actually use, because it sounds like an interesting tool that's going to assist, the carbon, capturing and also ultimately reducing carbon during construction. Dr. Olaomi, let me come to you. I understand that you worked on a research tagged Green BIM.
Okay.
And do you mind, telling our audience today what this research is all about, and how that Green BIM framework can assist us to reduce carbon during construction projects?
Yeah, the research is basically breaking down at various stages of a project, how we can measure the greenness of that project, how we can predict whether this project will be able to have a certain rating based on the base. My research was based on BIM, not the popular lead or BIM that we have in the UK. Okay. So my research basically say, okay, at this stage of probably at design stage, what aspects of sustainability of sustainability should you measure? Should you measure site and ecology? Should you measure energy? And if I mention energy, what aspect of energy should you measure? Because it depends on how, probably at the schematic stage, may not have a lot of data, a lot of information for you to predict a lot of things. So it guides you on what information that you need, and what information you need, and who need to provide it, and how do you, what do you need to use, or how do you make use of that information. For example, if you are situating your building probably in a new, probably outskirts suburb of a city that's growing, is there transport? Is it close to a transport network? Because sustainability or carbon emission is not basically the building, is also about transportation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it helps you to capture everything, so that you're able to, before you finish the full design and get a client approval, you're able to know that, of course, the building is efficient, but these other areas is not that good. So how do we modify it? How do we? What do we need to do to offset or to address this deficiency? So that's what my research work about. That's why I call it Green BIM.
BIM. So basically, it assists us to capture beyond carbon emission of a project, other sustainability factors, of that project before the project, commences, right?
Yes, exactly.
So is there any aspect of this research, or of this Green BIM that looks at, the actual process of during construction, just like you have rightly highlighted, transportation is part of, construction process. If you look at the life cycle, life cycle assessment of a building, there's the transportation, the A4 stage, the rebar A4 stage, and the actual construction process, which is the rebar A5 stage, right? So does this Green BIM framework, does it capture that aspect, or is just basically before the construction process begins?
Yeah, the Green BIM framework covers all the aspects, including the operational and management phase.
Interesting.
For example, the embodied carbon that we earlier talked about, the most stage of the project whereby it's most highest is the construction phase. And probably the way we manage the construction method we use is contributed to the embodied carbon. Absolutely. So we can't just focus on the design stage alone, the materials we use and stuff like that. Also the construction phase as well, because I research and practice, it's everything that is the highest phase. So the Green BIM framework that I'm talking about now help to they help to also evaluate some aspect of it. For example, the building method you are using, the site layout, how you position your equipment, things like that. Because all these contribute to the carbon emissions, even at the construction phase. And also it helps you to also probably, is there an aspect of the project whereby we might need to use prefab elements, probably to reduce some emissions or to reduce some wastage in materials as well. So the Green BIM framework helps to capture all this together.
Interesting. I think this Green BIM framework is something I believe contractors would be maybe interested in. Rachel, will you agree with me on that?
Yeah, definitely. So our policy and recommended standard at SCAPE is aligned to the UK BIM framework, and those ISO 19650 processes. It's quite simple, really. I don't want to say simple because people seem to be struggling with carbon measurement a little bit, but it is quite simple how it's laid out in terms of the assessment of the client's need, how you capture an early stage what their carbon requirements are, and then how they're tracked and monitored throughout the whole life cycle of the project. And at SCAPE, we've got a real driver for that at the moment because we're really trying to promote the whole life cycle thinking with our clients. Because it's always been very much concentrated, I would say, on CapEx rather than OpEx. So we're trying to get that whole life cycle thinking in our approach.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And Dr. Olaomi, from what you said, and I think that's the focus of my research as well. I'm looking at the construction, phase. That's the transportation, and the actual construction installation. Because it seems that people, or may I say, researchers are not really focusing on that aspect. It seems like the low-hanging fruit. I think there's a general belief that this stage does not actually emit a lot of carbon. But I mean, like you rightly said, I think that would also assist in my own research. There's actually, a lot of carbon that can be actually curtailed during the construction installation process and the transportation, associated with that. Thank you so much for that. And I will stay with you, Dr. Olaomi, for a bit. Now, as a researcher, as someone that, generally works around digital technologies, BIM, blockchain, Industry 4.0, and all of that. You've worked with a lot of stakeholders within the construction industry. Would you say that, there has been some challenges that you've identified in terms of actual reduction of carbon? And also, do you think that building information modeling can assist in driving down this carbon, and that can actually assist factors to then tackle these challenges?
Yeah, thank you. As they often say, the construction industry, we are mostly innovative rather than being inventive. Of course, the difference between the two. So one of the challenges I've faced is, people don't want to be the first. We call it the early mover. They don't want to take the advantage of the early mover advantage. Like, probably because of course at the early mover, the earliest innovator of a technology, may face high costs, may face a lot of challenges, logistics, bringing people on board. Because, for example, if you are working for a client organization, I want to bring your contractors on board. Do they have the capability? Not apart from technology, if they have software, do they have the technical skills? Do they have the relevant policies in place in the organization to ensure that they able to drive that in the project? Because as a client, of course, we want to emphasize it. Or if you don't have a level 2 BIM compliance, you can't bid for this project. They may say, okay, we have it, but can they really drive it? Can they really innovate? Can they be inventive as well? So these are some of the challenges I've faced trying to interact with industry people. Then also the issue of information. Because, for example, if you want to drive sustainability, carbon emission, you need data. If you don't have the right data to predict, to simulate, then you are just only making some probability which might fall in place, might be up, might be right or not. So you need data, and the challenge that everybody knows is everybody want to hold their data. Everybody want to have, oh, I can't share my data, probably the operational phase or even the BIM model. They don't want to share it
Okay.
with anybody. So
Okay.
and you don't have much data, you don't have data like such from different companies updated in an open source database where everybody can pick on it and see how we can improve our buildings. Look at
Okay.
Tesla, for example. They develop something innovative and they are make their license open source to every other car makers. If we can do such a thing in the construction industry, whereby you have some top license, okay, maybe MIT license, Creative Commons license, and which guides how people can use that
Data.
model or data, then of course we have to reduce that. And to the second question, how BIM can really help reduce carbon. Of course, BIM can reduce carbon a lot, but not on its own. It requires
Okay.
probably the use of other technologies,
Okay.
probably sensors, GPS, RFID, to ensure that we have a real-time visualization of how uh, probably the energy of a building is reducing or increasing, because it's good to design, but the most important phase is after the design building, everything's working well. What about the operational phase? Are the
Okay.
end users, the occupant, the landlord, are they on board with what you put in place in the building? Because okay, you put LED bulb, you put everything there, you put a sensors, a lighting system that is monitored by sensors, whereby if there's nobody in the space, there's light is off, you put all those things there. But what about continuity? What about the operation? What about replacement? Who is involved with that? Is there any change in behavior? So
Interesting.
that's the other aspect of that. I won't delve more into it. But as that BIM helping it, of course, it can help a lot. Because with BIM, we have to know or simulate how a building will be in operational phase and help, for example, the building manager having the data from the design and construction phase, able to anticipate the behavior of a building maybe in the summer or winter, and up to see whether the requirement in place, whether for energy or water,
Mhm.
or it meets the required means or it meets the required target of the target we have set for a building. That is okay, we don't want this building to emit more than this in a year annually.
Mm.
So not just about energy, it's also about water, waste, and all the stuff like that.
Awesome.
So of course, BIM is good, but it needs the support of other technology,
Technologies.
4.0 technology to ensure that we have a real-time, there is a form of a cyber physical system
Mm.
whereby we have the sensors in place, providing real-time informations, whereby, for example, let's say a room should be off, the light should be off, and probably there's an issue with the lighting system, it's not off. And
Mhm.
we can see it from our BIM model that the light is on. And from our BIM model, we can off it. You know,
Okay.
it provides
Interesting.
effective surveillance and monitoring as well.
Interesting.
So it's not just about having it designed, but also ensure that we are keeping that target within the limit, within the threshold, plus or
Interesting.
minus whatever we have.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Dr. Laomi. And that's the next question we'll go into, in terms of facilitating, collaboration, and real-time monitoring. But before we go there, Rachel, I know that you were nodding when he was talking
Yeah.
about the issue of data. Okay. I'm going to take your thoughts on that. Kindly, have that in mind. But I still want to stick with Dr. Laomi. You raised a cogent issue, which is, the early movers advantage versus disadvantage. Some, contractors might not want to adopt that or adopt BIM or any other technology first because they feel that it might probably cost them money or resources or all about something like that. What do you think? Could it be that it is because they feel that, number one, because this is also something I've faced in terms of interacting with contractors, could it be that they are scared of not only the cost implication to them, but the client? What about if the client is not inclined to them trying out this technology while carrying out the construction process, probably because the client might also be scared that it might involve more time, so they might not be able to deliver on time, and it could also, shoot cost up. And because, as we know, within the construction sector, you mentioned the example of Tesla. Tesla could be a case of, they've built a robust technology that they feel that it will take years for people to probably copy, for lack of a better word. But the construction industry, it's a bit the margin for a contractor is always small. So so could that contribute to that hoarding of data versus taking advantage of whatever technology, especially BIM, to reduce the carbon impact of their construction project?
Yeah, of course, that can be because, as you said, the profit margin is very low, and they don't want to use that so that they won't become bankrupt very soon. So it goes on the client, in
Okay.
which, of course, in most countries, the government is the biggest client of the construction industry. So because of the client to try to drive it, try to put the infrastructure in place. That okay, just bid for it. We just want you to have the technical competency at least for the contractor or supplier side. Then you can use our facility, you can use our infrastructures uh, to drive the project. And one of the problems we also have in the construction industry, we think project as a one-off event.
Yes.
You just have a project and you conclude it, and we move to the next one. There's no continued collaboration to ensure that we don't really learn. There's no lesson learned. That's one of the key things about project management. We don't really learn lessons from what we did previous. Whether we did it well, we don't go back and get feedbacks uh, from the from the building managers or what have you. So I think it goes on the client to really drive it, and also we can't always rely on the client if the client is not driving it. Contractors also, they can put their resources together. You understand? You can put
Yeah.
it. So if you are uh, giving out a very high quality service, then you have to bid higher. Then you have to get your money back from the client. Look at the example of Tesla I gave. Their cars is not cheap because they've used robust technology. So if I tell the client that, oh, this is what I'm offering you, this is the quality of service I'm offering you, you have to monitor your buildings with time, everything, you have to manage it with time. No, it's going to, like, if the client is willing to buy into that, of course, they have to pay higher for that, and the contractors need to get their money back. So there's need for contractors to pull ranks, combine their resources together, form consortiums, and then, for example, they can try to bid in groups as well. Probably they don't have enough resources individually to bid for a part of the technology required. They can put resources together and then bid for a project and then share the profit among themselves. And as they are producing high quality service, more clients will want to reach out to such controls or consortiums. And before we know it, the cost will be averaged out when we get the short run, even not even long run, and then we see a boom in innovative practices in the construction industry.
Interesting.
Yeah. Then also the government also has a part to play by providing subsidy incentives for the government for the people for contractors who use innovative technologies like capital allowances, things like that. Can be a way of helping them to innovate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lamy. I think Rachel, who works with Scape and they procure for the public clients, I think Rachel can assist us to break those points that you have raised down a bit. And so, Rachel, I'll come to you now. Two things you are going to assist us to take together. The first one is the data side of things. I discovered that you were smiling, you were shaking your head when we was talking about contractors not wanting to share that data. Okay, could you assist us to understand why this is a practice, or what are the challenges or fears that contractors have? Okay, then you can then assist us to break down the procurement side of things in terms of do you think is viable for the client, which is probably the government, to lead the charge in these regards?
Yeah, okay. So there's a couple of questions there. So the first one on data. because R&D is all led by data, and advancement of the industry is all led by data, and the quality of the data that we have to be able to make decisions about where we improve. Now, in relation to the construction playbook, all of the big gains, the big improvements, whether it be productivity, cost efficiency, carbon improvement, none of them are possible without open, shareable asset information. And that's what we don't really have as an industry. Like Timothy was saying, we don't have that. It's not shared, it's not open, it's not visible. And I think a lot of that is to do with the lack of the adoption of BIM, because the data probably is there, but we can't find it, we can't retrieve it, because it's only if it's held in a BIM model that it's coded in a classification system where we know that a window of a particular type is that particular code that compares with something else, you know, so you have to have it coded, otherwise it's just nonsense. So I think the problem is that a lot of the data is not coded, and BIM's been used generally for clash detection and to aid design and construction, but not really for information management. Okay. So the quality of data in BIM models is not particularly good. I think it will change on a positive note. It's just that it'll take time to come through now, because they've only really just started delivering ISO 19650 properly.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much. That it makes a lot of sense.
So that's the first one. And then in terms of, you were asking about the incentives from government because obviously more efficient carbon neutral buildings cost more, essentially. I think that's what you were asking about. So we do have that barrier because there are a lot of budgets and targets that our clients have to work within. And what we tend to find is the people that are procuring in the client organization are not always the people that run the building, you know, so they might be the facilitator of that build, but then they don't have too much of an interest in how it operates. And we're trying to connect those people at the moment so that the end user is brought in at that early phase where those critical decisions are made, and try and bridge that communication gap. And then in terms of the cost, it does cost more. We did a project just recently, a research project called the Circular Twin, where it was a hypothetical project. And we basically made all the decisions. It was a project that had been done in real life, but then we did it again hypothetically within a BIM model where carbon was the central decision maker, not money, not commercial. And it did cost more, but the payback period was about 7 years, and then it demonstrated massive savings. Wow. So we use that now with clients to try and say, look, you know, we have this data, it potentially might cost this much more, but in the long run, you will save so much more money. But like Timothy said, again, I was nodding because it's a change of behavior, because that's not how we're used to making decisions in construction. So it's going to take a while for that whole life thinking to come into the everyday.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that, you know, deep insight. You know, and one thing I've also found out, you know, is the behavioral change that needs to happen within the industry for us to be able to drive down, you know, carbon emission. And so, interestingly, you know, you mentioned how you sort of demonstrate to your clients that, you know, you can save money, you can spend money up front. Of course, you would gain it later on, and also you would have driven down carbon emission. So do you use that with, you know, some of your framework contractors as well? Do you sort of engage them in that regards?
Yes. So with the procurement route that we have, we are really unique in some ways because we are able to get all parties together at a really early stage.
Okay.
So in relation to the cost of carbon solutions and the cost of those, they pale in comparison to the cost of design and redoing design to make it more carbon neutral. So if you can do that earlier and not have redesign costs, and you can advise the client of what they need to do, because the client sometimes doesn't really know. That's another barrier. they don't know how to articulate what they want. So we bring the delivery partner in really early who does have that capability, and the lead appointed party, the lead designer, together to help the client to articulate what they want and then make the right choices in the first place in the design. Because the likelihood is, if you advise them too late, they can't change the design anyway because they've already spent too much money. If that makes sense. So we have that early contractor engagement.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Rachel. To our participants, thank you so much for sticking with us, and we hope you are enjoying the session so far. You can actually ask questions. Kindly put your questions in the comment section, and these questions are going to be picked up, and we would ask our panelists those questions. Again, we want to thank Your Hub for being a partner for this program. Also, Scape and Carbonetrics, which is a carbon management platform for the built environment sector. Now, Dr. Olawumi, let me come to you. You've spoken extensively about how BIM and other Industry 4.0 and other technology can actually work together in reducing carbon of a construction project, both before, during construction, and while it is operational. Kindly shed more light, into what your thoughts are regarding how BIM can actually facilitate, collaboration. Because like Rachel was saying, most of this data probably exists, but because they are not coded, probably using BIM, and so those data are not together, and then we cannot collaborate as a sector in driving down carbon, because carbon and other greenhouse gas emission, associated with construction projects, they seem to be the, big elephant in the room now. And so do you want to share your thoughts regarding how BIM can assist in facilitating collaboration to drive down carbon emission?
Okay, thank you. I would like to discuss under the existing framework of how we work in the industry, because let me not talk futuristic. Under the same framework, I will talk about how BIM can help us now, let's say within a small circle or small hub of the project team, designers, suppliers, and stuff like that. For example, of course, Revit is one of the most common softwares used, and it also have the cloud platform as well. And it has a platform whereby on Revit Cloud, even on Revit, whereby various teams can collaborate on the design, and then any changes by any design team is easily reflected, and you can know who made the changes. So, for example, as Rachel said, it's good to change our procurement system and have everybody on board, including the manufacturers as well. For example, there's what we have, we call there's a library, environmental product library, product declaration library. So this environmental product declaration library is a library of a catalog of building materials and products, which have been investigated by a third party, have been certified by a third party, whereby the emissions of each material that are being emitted during the manufacturing stage, what we want to emit during the construction phase, and even during the operational phase. So if you have the manufacturer involved, maybe manufacturer of a product, for example, involved, and you plug in the Revit object, that is the material, into the Revit, you can easily analyze, for example, the bricks, what would be the emission during the operational phase, and then with that, you're able to calculate the annual emissions. Also, so for suppliers, they have the understanding of the requirement, even the manufacturer as well. They know, okay, this is what we want, and then they tell you that, oh, these are the possibilities involved, or probably, oh, why can't we modify it this way? Because of course, this material is very carbon efficient, but if you want to emit a lot of carbon manufacturing it, probably you have to do a lot of mining or go to some manufacturing process that's not yet efficient. So they can provide advice as well. Then also, as I've earlier said, if we bring in the contractors, the manufacturers, you can advise whether, okay, this part of this project, can we do it in a prefab factory? in a more controlled environment, whereby you can easily conduct even real-time testing of that room. Apart from we having a BIM simulation, modeling, or maybe of the energy, the water requirements, or the air quality, what have you, the prefab factory enables us to even have a real time what is going to happen real time during the rain. You can simulate all that real time on factory. So having all these contractors on board with BIM, it enables us to really have this on ground before we have a project in place. And also, contractors are much knowledgeable about construction methods
Absolutely.
than even clients in most instances. So they can advise that, okay, this building we are doing, of course, you have is an energy efficient building, but the construction method will not be efficient. So it's going to, cancel out the efficiency we are trying to derive from this building. I tell you that, okay, this is the method you can use. Should you use off-site or should you use a combination? If you are using on-site construction, these are the way we can go about it. They can advise. And then all this is brought into place before we start doing the having a detailed design, because a lot of money spent in that, as Rachel said, and contract clients do not want a rework or redesign at an advanced stage. They're like, I already spent a lot of money and stuff like that. So BIM helps us to have all those people in place, providing their own input, everybody looking at the design, the model, the specifications, and providing advice based on their own expertise. And then we have a more efficient building, or even near zero carbon building.
Thank you so much, Dr. Laomi. Rachel, do you want to contribute to what Dr. Laomi said?
Yeah, I think that it comes back to data again and the disconnection with data in our industry. We've got lots of islands of innovation, but they're not connected.
Yes.
So we can't really be slick like the manufacturers of cars, because they're all connected in terms of manufacturing to the production of that car to the end user. So we need to any R&D that connects manufacturing data with construction processes is going to be really valuable, because there's a little bit, I think, of going back to what you always do. So, like, for example, we always use virgin steel generally when we build a project, and we always specify that, because the contractor will just build what the designer specifies in a lot of instances if they're not in charge of the design. If they are in charge of the design, maybe they've got a little bit more sway. It depends how connected the designer and the contractor are with these innovative new methods of, these green steel providers and steel that's maybe can be reused. All of the conversations about circular economics, that do you actually have to use new? Well, yes, because that's how we maintain quality and risk. But actually, does it need to be? Could you get good quality reusable? There's all these questions now that are being raised because we've just always defaulted to just doing it the way we always have. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think that's part of why the construction carbon talk came about, because it's something that I observed, that there is a lot of innovation going on within the industry, especially as it relates to reducing carbon. However, different organizations, different professional bodies, they have this sort of innovation that they are working on to reduce carbon, which is great. It shows that a lot of effort is going on to reduce carbon. However, there needs to be a rally point, for everybody to come together to put all this innovation together. Which one is actually, which one can be adopted? Which one can be combined to reduce carbon? Because ultimately, that's what we all want to do, to drive down carbon, to ensure that, the effect of climate change is mitigated at the end of the day. So, and that's why Construction Carbon Talk is here. And thank you so much for our panelists for your contribution, so far. And we hope that our participants and audience are also enjoying what our panelists have been discussing. Now, we have a question from one of our audience. It's called the Pro. That's the name of our audience who asked the question. So the Pro has said that how do we conduct pre-construction assessments of projects for carbon reduction as a means of selecting contracting organization? Rachel, do you want to take the lead on this?
Yeah, so there's two parts probably to that question, but in terms of how it's done in the industry, I think it's very varying at the moment, because there's some organizations, well, obviously many organizations now have carbon reduction policy. So it depends on the procuring organization or how the project's been tendered, or what the quality criteria for that was. But in terms of SCAPE frameworks, we pre-vet all of our partners. So we have a very rigorous, robust procedure when we let our frameworks. So we've basically done it. We basically have an oven ready solution ready to go for our clients. We have a recommended standard in terms of a default standard if the client doesn't have a particular environmental standard they want to follow. And we have procedures in place so that that conversation happens with the client. So anyone who works on our framework has to do that. It's just part of the process. But I'm not sure if that's widespread.
So, Dr. Laomi, do you have any, insights? I mean, as a researcher, do you have any insight into, how you think a pre-construction assessment can be done? Probably from, like the Green BIM research that you work on in assisting to select contractors.
Yeah, thank you. When I saw the question, I was like, this person just pick it up from a proposal I recently wrote that I'm expecting funding for. Because what I noticed is that we focus more on materials, stuff like that, but we don't really look at the supply chain, the value chain, and also responsible sourcing in the built environment. When we focus on, is the material okay? Do you have good water system, energy system? When we focus on that, don't look at the supply chain. So my research will be looking at that. Hopefully it gets funded, and then hopefully in the next 1-2 years, population is I have some papers on that. But to answer the question, one thing I noticed about organizations is that not all of them embraces all the aspects of sustainability or carbon reduction. Some majorly focus on probably on energy, and then they take it in depth. Some will focus on water and energy. Some will focus on indoor air quality and energy or something like that. So the first question is, what is the focus of that client organization? What are they trying to drive at? What do they want in that project? And then from that, they will try to they can try to see the suppliers, the contractors, the subcontractors, and all those stuff like that. What is their capabilities? Do they have a policy in place? Like Michelle said, the organization have signed up to that, having a carbon reduction program, policies in place. Do they have that in place? And to what extent does it align with what we have? Are they willing to probably improve on that to suit our projects? And then also the aspect of responsible sourcing. They have the contractor. Do they have a supply chain whereby they source materials from right sourcing? Is it do they source their timber from their illegal logging? Because if we say that if you want to use timber is good for it helps to store a lot of carbon, it emits less carbon, things like that. But it's causing deforestation somewhere else. So we can't be moving somewhere and be affecting somewhere else. So we have to look at all those aspects, and then look at the value chain, supply chain of the contractors, suppliers. Are they responsible sourcing? If you are also more into recycling, do they have a supply chain involved where they can recycle waste and maybe turn into something else within the project and things like that? So that can be an overview of what you can look at as a client organization to decide whether to select this contractor or supplier, what have you.
Interesting. Thank you so much.
Shed more light on that.
Okay, awesome. In fact, I'm enjoying this conversation because it is touching on all the key aspects of my own, PhD research, because, I'm looking at behavioral change of contractors. I'm looking at supply chain, carbon, because like you rightly said, the supply chain carbon is what contractors have identified to be, the most part of their carbon emission, especially tier one contractors. And so it is important to monitor this. And this is one thing that, Carbonetrics is actually trying to also, solve, to assist, tier one contractors and even the tier two contractors, who are the subcontractors and tier three contractors, to manage the carbon while going through the construction process. And again, that way, the tier one contractors can track, the supply chain carbon, the carbon being emitted by their subcontractors. And, that way, efforts can be made in reducing those carbon, or even before efforts being made in reducing those carbon, those tier one contractors as well, while executing the project, there's probably a carbon target that they want to ensure that they don't go beyond, or even if possible, they should go below the target. So, I mean, these are some of the things that Carbonetrics is also trying to work on, and hopefully, this all the impact of carbon associated with construction can be tackled when we have people like yourself, Dr. Laomi, when we have people like Rachel that work with Scape. We have the different frameworks. We have the tier one contractors who are all working to ensure that supply chain carbon is being reduced at the end of the day. And so I'm going to take the next question. And the next question is going to be, as we're winding down now, is going to be based on your experience. And I'll ask both of you the same question, Rachel and Dr. Laomi. Based on your experience, do you think that BIM, now let's focus specifically on the construction phase of project, do you think realistically BIM can assist to reduce carbon? I know you've both spoken about it, but I want us to sort of hit that nail on the head in this regard. Rachel, do you want to go first?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, I absolutely think it's the most efficient way of doing it, because like I was touched on, I think before, yes, if you can do that digitally and you can scan the design without lots and lots of manual calculations, because designs do change, things do change, clients want to swap components out, change them for other things, maybe just optioneer, maybe just have a design and then look at different more carbon neutral solutions. But that takes time and costs money to do all of that optioneering. So if you're doing that manually, that's really difficult, really inefficient, and is going to cost the client a lot of money and a lot of time, and they probably just won't really do it. Whereas if you're doing it in the BIM model, and like with the auto BIM tool, you can scan it and it takes 2 hours, and then if you need to change something, you can scan it again, and it gives you this data. Okay. And you can say, well, it was so many tons of carbon, now we've changed the component, it's this. It just gives you a lot more I suppose a lot more power to influence the client's decision, make it more informed. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Richard. Dr. Laomi. Yeah, Richard has said it. As I said, it could even to help more in decision making, because we are trying to move away from the manual way of doing things. And BIM, once everything's in a single place, we have the information management, we're able to automate, and then any for example, probably the architect designed a drawing and sent to social engineers. Probably social engineers, because they don't have knowledge of carbon emissions, they included some elements or some things. And if you have some plugin that measure carbon, can you say, oh, there's a spike in carbon emission of this building, and then you can easily make decision that, we probably need to change the structural engineers or what have you, or probably we need to tell them to revise the model to ensure that it meets the carbon target of the project. So at construction phase, it's very much important to have BIM in place, and also for site management as well, and logistics as well. You have to, for example, BIM helps us to have a snapshot of the progress on site. You can easily track it. So you don't supply too much materials on site, or you don't send too much materials to the site, whereby it becomes too much than more than what we need, and then we have to send it back to the factory or what have you. And if you may say that, oh, of course, we have sent it back, and you can use it on that project. What about the carbon emission during the transportation process as well? So carbon BIM can help us to able to have a staged delivery of materials on site, help us to probably when there are materials on site as well, the equipment, and also even uh, probably like example now whereby there's issues with sources of materials because of course the war in Ukraine. Behind the airports, probably we need to change some material because of we can't source it from these suppliers again because they don't have the raw material for it. I need to probably change the design because sometimes it's not only in design phase whereby we revise design, sometimes the construction phase because of probably you can't get materials, but there's a spike in the price of that material. I want to change to a better material. Then BIM can help us if we need to revise the design, to say that okay, what's the percentage change in the carbon emission because we change this material, replace this material with this another one, and BIM can help us give us that indicator, and then help us to make decision in a very quick mode.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that input. Rachel, do you want to contribute more?
So just really quickly, I wanted to say we focused quite a lot on the impact of BIM in the design process, which is really important because about 50% of a carbon's project's life cycle carbon is in the embodied. However, there is another benefit of BIM because I think we're missing, possibly, we haven't talked about the recirculation of lessons learned. So if you're building a hospital of a particular type, or a particular school, it's likely that we will build the same building or a very similar building again. And just, have you heard the phrase reinventing the wheel? I think we do that a lot in construction. So we go through this whole process of all these carbon optioneerings and measurements every single time because we don't have access to the data of when we did it before. So how BIM helps is that if you've got a record in relation to a digital twin of a building, for example, or a stage 2 BIM model, next time you build that and because you've coded those components, you don't have to do that all again. You can say, well, last time we did all that was sufficient. Yeah. We just use it again. And you recirculate that to the BIM model of a new design, which doesn't happen at the moment. We just redo it every time.
Interesting point. I mean, so basically it's going to save us time and effort while carrying out another construction, which is fantastic. And just like one of our audience has said, Adamu Mohammed, this is something that is rarely talked about, and I think that's part of why a lot of maybe clients or contractors, as the case may be, have not really adopted BIM in its full effect. And Mohammed has rightly pointed the African continent, and I think that at the end of the day, yes, we are discussing based on the UK context, as Rachel give us insight, and as Dr. Olaomi is giving us insight as a researcher, not only in the UK construction sector, but what obtains as an industry. The effect is going to be felt, within the world, including the African continent. And someone from Africa myself, I'm very hopeful that this sort of conversation is going to transcend beyond the shores of Britain, and is going to go broadly, because that's why we're hosting it on YouTube. Anybody can actually come back, watch this. Watch this discussion from anywhere in the world and take the learnings, because one of the major mission of Construction Carbon Talk is to promote shared learning internationally, and we hope that it's going to have that effect ultimately. Now, as we are winding down, Let me thank the audience once again for sticking with us up until this time. Let me thank Rachel. Let me thank Dr. Olaomi, and also your hub, Scape, and Carbonetrics. I'm going to ask you one question, Rachel. Okay, and this is based on the portal, the construction waste portal that Scape, have launched. I think maybe late last year or early this year. Okay, and this, coming across this portal was actually something that interests me a lot, because again, from my research, I found out that almost 30% of the material that gets to site becomes waste even before usage, and this is a lot of carbon going down the drain even before we use them. So do you want to tell us how construction waste portal is going to assist, in ensuring that we don't generate this much waste? And when it's being generated, how it's going to, be recycled and ensure that, the carbon impact effectively is reduced from a construction project?
Yeah, so the construction waste portal was originally came into life to reduce the cost of waste. So it basically profiles types of waste and increases traceability of where that goes and what happens to it. So there is a wider dialogue that I think you're trying to attach, where we could, at the moment, it's not linked to BIM, but with that lessons learned in mind that we were talking about before, I think in the future it could be, when we get more data across more sectors and that data bank of waste builds. There's so many opportunities of what we're going to be able to do with that for circular economics and repurposing of waste into new designs.
Interesting. And still sticking with you, Rachel, as we wind down, we have some upcoming professionals, joining us, and who are probably going to be listening to this session after we must have concluded it. What would you like to say to upcoming professionals, especially people still in the university, in terms of focusing on carbon emission in construction, and how their knowledge within the university environment or college environment can actually be transferred or adapted within the construction space? I want you to talk to us as someone that has worked, with a big contractor or a big contracting organization before. Because again, it seems that when people graduate from the university or college, they struggle to fit into the construction, the construction organization, because what operates in the construction organization is probably different from what is being taught within the university environment. So can you assist us to sort of shed light to close this gap?
Yeah, I think that it's digital skills as well as the carbon literacy, I think is what you're talking about. There is sort of an aging workforce in construction as well. So I think we will see a big shift. Even with my children, they remind me, they just think differently naturally without being told to. So I think that those people who are graduating now and naturally coming into construction will innovate and will bring that thinking with them. But I also think that they'll be more demanding on the type of organization they work for. So if you don't have policies and you don't have environmental concerns and you don't have the procedures in place, I think you'll just struggle to attract the best talent. So I think there's a little bit of natural change that will happen over time, but also a lot that the industry needs to do to attract the next generation to want to work in construction.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Olaomi, from your point of view as a researcher and as a lecturer, what would you say to that in terms of what should be taught, within the university environment so that they can easily innovate and easily, fit into the construction industry when they graduate?
Of course, the university has curriculum and basically is guided by most programs are guided by professional bodies. So what I would call for is more synergy between professional bodies and universities. When they are trying to go for accreditation, let them know that this is what we want in the industry. Try to bring that on board with them, in discussion with them, so that they can think of how they can bring their research. A lot of research is being done in the academics, which is not most time passed to the teaching. So that needs to be done as well. Then also students as well coming in. Of course, you may not be able to, in the university may not be able, it may not teach you everything about sustainability. So you need to make use of a personal study time have a broad knowledge of it before you specialize. Because what I see is people trying to, I want to, about energy, I'm about water. Of course, it's good, but try to have a broad understanding of it so that you have to think from various perspectives. Because sometimes energy affects water. Water may affect that matrix one way or the other. They are sometimes interwoven. So having a broad understanding of it will give you a better way of thinking and be able to be inventive rather than just be innovative.
Interesting. Rachel, you want to say something to that as well?
Yeah, maybe just as well in terms of mentoring programs, I think potentially between students and industry professionals. I think there is a disconnect that you have to spend time, I suppose, in each other's worlds, wouldn't you? So I don't know if that even exists, but that would be a good thing to do. Some kind of mentoring, like pairing up of people, and more apprenticeship programs, of course, where it's on the job learning as well.
That's interesting. I think such mentoring should actually be brought up. I don't know if institution of civil engineers actually have such mentoring program. I'm struggling to remember if I read something like that.
I think I've seen a lot of it. If it does exist, I'm not sure, but it probably would be good, because I think that they would both get something out of it, because the student would bring the new way of thinking, and the professional would obviously be able to impart how things work in reality on the job. I mean,
interesting. Thank you so much, Rachel and Dr. Olaomi, for your time today. We want to spend 1 hour. We've actually gone slightly over an hour a bit. Interesting conversation. We don't want it to end, but we have to end the conversation somewhere today, which I believe it's a good spot to end the conversation today. Mentoring, collaboration between professional bodies and university, between people within the industry, mentoring those that are still in the university to ensure that indeed they are learning the right skills that they can bring into the industry and fit in properly when they graduate. So thank you once again to our panelists. Thank you to Your Hub. Thank you to Scape. Thank you to Carbonetrics.com and to all the Construction Carbon team, Construction Carbon Talk team. Thank you so much for your time today. And we would see you in next month's episode of the Construction Carbon Talk series. So thank you so much for today. I will see you some other time. Bye.
Bye.
bye.